in this second ballot. I want to talk to Manu Raju, who just spoke with one of the 19 rebels, Congressman Chip Roy, Republican of Texas, who voted for a colleague of his from Florida on the first vote and voted for Jim Jordan on the second. Manu, what did Congressman Chip Roy have to say?
Yeah, he is really not moving off his opposition, really aligning himself with a number of conservative members, those hardliners who want a number of demands to strengthen the rank and file, weaken the speakership, things that Kevin McCarthy says he already has agreed to. But Roy making very clear to me that he is almost certainly not going to be in the McCarthy camp.
You got to be able to have the people at the table in the Rules Committee or otherwise involved in the decision making to guarantee that we'll actually enforce the rules we just talked about. By the way, everybody that was in that Republican Congress meeting this morning said, oh, we like the rules. Good job. Chip and you guys, you worked hard for the rules. And then at the end, they said, but if you don't vote for McCarthy, we're going to get rid of the rules. It's a game. That's the game. And they actually put a quote on the board that said something in the zip code of, hey, for the part of trying to put people on the committee with diverse views, and Kevin said that, he said, but a whole lot of people in the room didn't want that.
So what he's referring to is the morning meeting that occurred today in which Kevin McCarthy tried to essentially arm twist these members into supporting him. That clearly backfired for people like Chip Roy, saying that essentially what they are suggesting, their threats and the like, did not win them over. In fact, grew the opposition, had the opposite effect that McCarthy and his allies had wanted. But McCarthy's allies are indicating, Jake, that they are not moving either. I just talked to Congressman Mike Lawler, he's the incoming congressman, who told me that if it goes to 50 ballots, he plans to stick with Kevin McCarthy for 50 ballots. He said to those conservative foes, what is their end game? We'll keep voting and voting and voting. And guess what? They don't have enough votes, and we outweigh them. So that's the question here, Jake. Who will blink first? Right now, the McCarthy allies are saying they won't do it, and neither will the conservatives. And will there be some sort of consensus? At the moment, no consensus candidate. And Kevin McCarthy, 19 votes against him right now. He needs to only keep that to 4 votes. Unclear when or if that will happen.
So we just heard Manu talking to Congressman Chip Roy, one of the 19 rebels who seemed to suggest he's not blinking. I just got a text, Abby Phillip, from one of the 203 voting for Kevin McCarthy, who said McCarthy will get the vote. We're not blinking either.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the hallmark of this group of 19 and the folks who are kind of leading this charge is that it's all about throwing a wrench in the machine, but not actually solving any problems. Who is the alternative? No one has really emerged who will actually have a shot of getting to 218. And I think that it is fair to kind of put the onus on the never McCarthys and say, okay, so who?
Right.
So who's the person who's going to get there? Otherwise, they're going to be voting all night and maybe tomorrow and until next year, until someone else emerges, if it's not going to be.
Well, and so here's the challenge. If you're part of what I would refer to as the governing wing, not necessarily moderate, but people who actually want to get stuff done. Right now, Jim Jordan is sitting in that wing. The challenge has always been that those people actually do want to see things happen. They want to bring deliverables home to their district. That's what their voters are demanding. If you're a Republican in a Biden district, that's what they're saying. That's what they need to get reelected. Those people ultimately are going to have more of an incentive to end this. I mean, I almost swore right there, to end this show, you fill in the blank, that's happening right now on the House floor, because they have political incentives that line up with ending it and finding a Speaker of the House. These 19 people, and this has been the problem with dealing with the Freedom Caucus, from John Boehner to Paul Ryan, right on down to where we are today, is that they do not seem to care about that piece of it. They don't care about governing. Their self-interest, you've heard the word narcissist being used by many of their opponents in the Republican Party today. They care about, as John has said, appearing on right-wing radio. What is their profile? The leverage and the ways that leadership used to have to get control of people like these 19 are basically gone. And that means that for them, sitting here and doing this 50 times, who cares? They don't have any skin in that game necessarily. Whereas all these people who are sitting with Kevin McCarthy, they actually do. And they may get to a point where they have to say, look, we got to make a change here.
But can I just say one thing? This McCarthy ally just sent this to me. This is a quote from Congressman Guy Reschenthaler, would be an incoming chief deputy whip. If they think this is going to be a game of chicken to see who's going to blink first, they're going to be sadly surprised. We'll be here until 4th of July voting for McCarthy.
Well, that's the thing. They feel like if they back down, they're giving in to these 19, but really the 5 and the 9 who've been going back and forth all week. That's what Mike Lawler said earlier. He said, we'll take 1 vote or 100 votes. He said, we're going to keep going until we elect a speaker. I'm fully committed to that. He said, Kevin McCarthy is not backing down from this. And we should note that in that tense meeting we were talking about this morning, Mike Rogers from Alabama said they would remove these people from their committees that are voting against Kevin McCarthy.
I don't think they care.
Well, yeah, I mean,
They don't care,
yeah.
but it is important because part of the negotiations that they've been talking about with the concessions has been what the committee makeup looks like and how many members of the House Freedom Caucus are on certain committees.
Well, I mean, McCarthy said he would give them more or less what they wanted, and they don't
Still
want
said
that.
no.
I mean, some
Right.
of those members have said on the record, it doesn't matter what Kevin McCarthy offers us, we are not going to take it. And I think to Casey's point, the underlying problem here is that there is a huge portion of the Republican base that is not interested in any way, shape, or form in anything that's happening in Washington. The whole point is to rabble rouse, to stick it to the other side, to throw out red meat. And as long as that's the incentive structure, it's really hard if you're trying to hand out some carrots when there's nothing that you can offer them that will be good enough.
Look, this is a group who wants to burn it down. Kevin offered them everything, and they said no. They don't want it. I also think we should talk about former Congressman Rodney Davis talked about the Democrats, that they're going to get tired and they're going to step up. Nonsense.
Oh, no, they love
A
this.
lot of popcorn on
Nonsense.
The happiest people on the
Here
floor of the House.
all day, all night, and the only question in my mind someone said to me, "Who's happier right now,
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi or Liz Cheney?" And I think that's
a great question.
It's a good question, but the Democrats are sitting in the best seat, and this is not up to them.
Yeah.
It's up to Kevin McCarthy. And I just want to say one more thing. Chip Roy started this process not as one of the 5 Never Kevins.
No, he was one of the 9.
He was one of
Kevin
the 9.
skeptics.
He was trying to negotiate. He thought this could be done before Christmas. That was a very angry Chip Roy there. I think that his position has hardened in the last 24 hours.